For today's episode of Critically Condemned Reviews, I'm tackling the 2011 movie, The Green Hornet. Shout out to Bob Collin Hughesby for the suggestion. See guys, I read your comments. And while I'm talking at you, go ahead and hit that like button before you forget. I'll even play my intro for you while you do that. The history of the Green Hornet dates back to 1936, when the character first appeared on the radio. Remember when people used to listen to the radio? Boy howdy! From there, the hero appeared in short films in the 40s, a TV show in the 1960s featuring Bruce Lee, numerous comics, and then the 2011 Seth Rogen film. A real gem! This movie actually came out the same year as The Green Lantern, which probably didn't help it much, especially since both movies were kind of like, meh. Now, before I really get started breaking down the good and the bad of this movie, I have to admit, I am not a Seth Rogen fan. He's obviously not what you would call a transformative actor. With Seth Rogen, you're always gonna get Seth Rogen. You know, the schlubby, pothead, deadbeat type of character who might make you laugh by getting kicked in the nuts, but not because he delivered a well-executed ongoing joke. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Seth Rogen's character Britt gets beat up by his partner because they're in some feud about who's gonna win the girl and who the best superhero is. I mean, who doesn't want to see Seth Rogen get the crap beat out of him with random household items scattered throughout a mansion? The basic premise of the movie is that Britt's being raised by his single, very wealthy dad who runs a newspaper in LA and dies suddenly, leaving the newspaper in Britt's very incapable hands. Through a series of fortuitous events, Britt befriends a martial artist named Kato, and they start to fight crime. Let's start with some good stuff. Journalism and the role of the press in our world today is an ambitious topic that this movie addresses, even if it's kind of superficial. But controversial topics such as reporting and manipulating the news is always interesting to explore. And super relevant, especially today. I like how the movie asks how long the printed newspaper will survive with, the all-consuming role of the internet. I think my favorite scene in the whole movie is when the reporters are in the writing room trying to figure out what to call the vigilante before they settle on the Green Hornet. There's a lot of playful back and forth between the writers, and it feels really authentic and fun. It's honestly one of the better highlights of the film. And from there, it just gets a little predictable. Let's talk about some characters. Kato is definitely the most enjoyable character here. He's good at fighting. But yeah, seriously, his fight scenes are all a lot of fun to watch. Slow motion, vibrant color. From his perspective, all of the weapons held by the bad guys are highlighted in red. It's kind of like in Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes when he can do that thing with his mind. When Sherlock Holmes is super smart and plays it out ahead of time, what he's gonna do. Cameron Diaz is in this movie too. Yeah, she plays the temp secretary to Britt. She's fine, I guess, but she's supposed to be this brilliant journalist, right? And yet she never figures out that Britt is in fact the Green Hornet. She should have realized that the second that Britt asked for a large selection of green ties to be brought into his office. But no! Also, Britt continues to ask every reporter in the office to write articles all about the Green Hornet. You'd think that would tip her off. And David Harbour is in this too! The guy from Stranger Things? He plays the district attorney running for re-election. At the end of the movie, spoiler, it's revealed that he's part of the mastermind that has been covering up the city's crime. Harbour does a fine job, but there's not a lot of depth here. Nothing compared to Police Chief Jim Hopper. Love me some Stranger Things. Before I move on to some of the not so great stuff, I gotta say I love some of the music selection in this movie. We got Johnny Cash, we got Sam Cooke, Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise is in it. There's a little something for everybody. On to the bad. The main bad guy here is a character named Chudnovsky, played by Christoph Waltz. Yes, Christoph Waltz, who has won 2 Academy Awards with his Tarantino films and is part of the ongoing James Bond franchise. But here, he's not so good. And I feel like a lot of that is the direction, which is also weird because this director is pretty talented. The film director is Michel Gondry, who also directed Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, one of my favorite films of all time. But it seems like Gondry and Waltz can't quite figure out this villain. Is he supposed to be terrifying or goofy? Unclear. And sure, you can totally be both, but they don't quite strike that balance. Towards the end of the film, instead of going by the name Chudnovsky, he decides to take on the moniker Bloodnovsky. He then goes on to embrace the whole villain thing and dons a red leather jacket and a gas mask. It all just reads kind of contrived. He starts telling jokes about where they're gonna go out to eat for dinner and how his gas mask is fogging up. Who cares? He's got a villain monologue to Kato instead of just killing him right away, which of course gives Britt enough time to come in and take him out. The other character that I don't really love is obviously Britt himself. And I know I've already talked about how much I dislike Seth Rogen, but man, he would be an HR nightmare. Talk about some borderline harassment towards his co-workers. He also has absolutely nothing going for him without Kato. Kato even tells him this to his face. Team Kato. As far as general storytelling goes, I had to ask myself, why did this newspaper automatically go to Britt's hands after his dad died? I mean, I'm pretty sure his dad would hate the idea of Britt running his company. There's also a lot of montages in this movie. The costume montage, the gadget montage, the criminals spreading all the news about the bounty on the Green Hornet montage. Speaking of the gadgets though, I love that their car is all souped up and has a fax machine. But there's also a lot of talk about USBs and the net. This film is very much a product of 2011. From there's a lot of predictable beats that play out. The heroes befriend each other, they start crime fighting, they have a rift in their relationship, and then kiss and make up through a shared experience of killing the big bad guy in the final act. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Perhaps the worst scene in the movie is when Britt discovers the truth about the David Harbour character. He somehow receives a visit from his deceased dad while sitting in a sushi restaurant, and discovers that the district attorney is a bad guy. Is his dad a ghost? Unclear. It just all seems kind of forced. A car chase ensues as they leave the restaurant and go to the newspaper building with a lot of hijinks along the way. Kato jumps from one car to another for some reason, and this leaves Britt alone to drive the car, which he doesn't know how to do, because he's an idiot. And the car is like super awesome and is made by Kato. I will say the film is not afraid to kill off the bad guys in a big way. One guy gets stabbed in the eyeballs, and the other guy gets dropped in a car off the very top of the skyscraper. Smashed! But the conclusion feels very random. After the bad guys die, there's a scene where the two heroes go back to Cameron Diaz's house and try to figure out the gunshot wound that Britt suffered. Cause he got shot. Cause he's an idiot. Then Britt appoints the head editor dude to take over the newspaper. Cause he's an idiot. There's no real sense of closure when it comes to Chudnovsky's end of power in LA. I mean, like, did the Green Hornet help? We don't really know. And if Britt isn't working for the newspaper anymore, I guess he's still out crime fighting with Kato. It's just not the cleanest wrap-up from a storytelling perspective. All in all, this movie's about what you'd expect. That's my review. I give Green Hornet 36 bumblebees because it doesn't even matter. If you want to watch the Green Hornet, it is available on Netflix now. Also, Universal is rebooting the character, but there's no timetable yet on when that film might be released. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next time. I've been spending most of my life living in a gangster's paradise. I don't want to sing Coolio, because I'm not good.